am Rosanna, the director of Gecko Art Studio in Florence, and tonight I am with our guest, Borja Perez Mielgo. Hello, Borja.
Hello, Rosanna.
That many of you will already know because you, together with Octavio Palomino, our sculptor director, you made a lot of interesting IG Live about the Baroque period and about Caravaggio.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, and very important, from March of this year, Borja starting teaching a painting workshop on the Caravaggio paintings technique at Gecko Art Studio.
That's right.
So Borja, I have few questions for you tonight. So, can you tell us why do you have this specific interest for this period? So.
Sure. I mean, usually I have to give an explanation of my background. I call it like a personal genesis.
Okay.
Everybody has like a personal genesis where they find some kind of personal interest for art, and therefore for a certain period of time. In my case, I started drawing since I was a child, since I was actually 2 years old, and I was lucky that I had a family that they always encouraged me to draw, and you know, it's a family from artists and philosophers, and you know, and it was the right atmosphere, and they got me, and yeah, you know, to draw.
And it is very important.
It's very important.
Yeah.
Until I remember when I was a teenager, I was drawing, and there was a point around 13, 14 that I fell in love with the Italian Renaissance.
Okay.
And of course, Michelangelo, Rotti, Raphael, Leonardo da Vinci, Botticelli, you know, like all
the masters.
All the masters. And I was just doing master copies without knowing that I was doing a master copy. I was just getting all the drawings, and I was copying them, trying to be accurate, trying to understand the anatomy, and dreaming that maybe one day I will draw like them and do great things. And when I was around 16, if I'm not mistaken, that's when I realized that I wanted to take it further, and that's when I discovered Caravaggio.
Okay.
And I just fell in love with Caravaggio, like such a, you know, the dramatism and the theater of his paintings, and you know, I was just shocked. Like this is completely new for me.
Of these light shadows, they are incredible.
Yeah, especially when you see it for the first time, because you know he has been always around, but you know I remember I got a book and I was going through the images and like, oh my God, this is, if you compare it with the Renaissance, this is quite a different thing. So my family took me to a trip to Italy when I was 16, and we were literally hunting Caravaggio. Okay, where are they? We're just going to go to the museum, and we're going to see the paintings, and it was such an experience seeing the paintings in front of me, and that's when I realized, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is how I want to paint.
Okay.
And shortly after, I discovered José de Rivera, which is basically Caravaggio's technique taken further. And that's what the funny thing is that I was going through the book, and I was like, oh man, this is too much. It's just impossible. This guy is too good. It's amazing. So is Caravaggio, but you know, wow. And you know, I there was like that little challenge inside myself back then. I said like, well, it seems impossible, but why not? I want to paint like this. I want to understand this technique, the time, the period, why they painted like that. How was Italy back then? What was going on? And from there to here, and that was.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, quite a trip.
Yeah. And you are now in Italy.
And now I'm in Italy, so
wow.
yeah, I'm very happy.
So, do you think that there is any connection with this period today?
Yes, it is.
It's a difficult question.
It's a difficult question. So I'll try to summarize this, and I'll try to answer the best I can, because of course it's a very broad topic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean.
And you know, I'll try my best. But yes, of course there is a connection today with Baroque. I mean, many scholars suggested it, but I personally can see it, and I can see like these three period, the Hellenism in ancient Greece
yeah.
is very connected to the Baroque period, and the Baroque period is very connected to the 20th and 21st century. Giving like a brief summary of the events that happened in the ancient world in the modern age and today. In the time of the Greeks, for example, as everybody knows, there was the Athenians and Sparta that they fought against the Persian Empire, and eventually the Hellenistic culture, the Greek language, the Greek philosophy, the Greek art, but the Greek technology as well. It all was summarized into Aristotle's, and Aristotle was the teacher of Alexander the Great. So when Alexander the Great, through his armies and his generals, he conquered the Persian Empire, he Hellenized Asia, basically. So, those two parts of the world, they were like at the same level in terms of cultural. But at the same time, it was a syncretism, because of course, the Egypt of that time, the Mesopotamia and the Persia of that time, they already have like thousands of years of culture. So,
exactly, yeah.
But it was like the mixing, the syncretism with a new culture, which was the Greek, the Hellenism. And what happened, like it was the constructions of many cities, many Alexandrias. The Greek language was the Koine, was the language spoken, like what English would be today. The artistic manifestations, like it's cities like Persepolis or Alexandria in Egypt, they're starting to have like the Greek temples, the Greek architecture elements, the classical concept of beauty wasn't not imposed, but it was acquired at that time. And with this topic, we can go on and on and on. The thing is that eventually, the Empire of Alexander, which according to some scholars, it was like the first global empire of the ancient world, of course, was destroyed after Alexander's death. And it was a period of many powers, many empires fighting against each other, until eventually was another one that took over, which is the famous Roman Empire, which did exactly the same that Alexander did in Asia, but they did it in Western Europe. And it's a Romanization, so it was the same, like equalizing and Romanizing the cultures of Hispania, the Gallia, the Britannia, Germania, North of Africa, and building cities with the same hippodamic plan.
Yeah, urbanistic.
Yes, exactly. It was, they were thinking about it, like it was just not like, let's just get some territory, but let's build a city with a forum in the center, with the Romanus Maximus, etc., with the forum, the temples, the amphitheaters, all along the empire. And again, it was like through minery and through the army how this process happened, until again that empire fell, and it was another time of other empires or other societies confronting each other. Eventually, centuries later, the same happened during the Baroque. There was like this cultural connection between what today will be Italy, Spain, and Portugal, and France, which was the Catholic world. And of course, each of them will have like different king. Italy was the city-states, and etc. But what they have in common is that they were under the same law, the Catholic Church, papacy, and from Italy to the rest of Europe, it was the Renaissance. And then eventually it was like the first civilization of the globe. It was the American adventure, the construction of new cities in the Americas, Lima, Mexico, and it was again like this idea of like a global Catholic empire or Catholic world.
Universe.
Exactly, but that's what Catholic means, universal. And the same story happens that eventually the kingdoms of the north of Europe, through the Protestantism, the Calvinists and Martin Luther, confronted that universal empire. And that was a very interesting period of time where where things were changing dramatically. So again, like all the artistic elements were challenged, and that's why it was a response, which is the Baroque art. It was a response to the threat of the Protestantism, and it was a war of religion, trying to make sure that that Catholic empire wasn't destroyed, because for the people of the time, that's the only way to secure like a global peace. Or back in the days, of course, but sadly through wars, and that's human history. And eventually, as everybody knows, that world also collapsed. What is happening today? Pretty much the same. We live in a time after the Soviet Union collapsed, where the United States has become like the global empire, and through the whole globe we have like Hollywood movies, we got the American culture, where we also absorb, and that's how we dress. English is like the modern coined, the modern language that everybody speaks. You're Italian, I'm Spanish, and we're speaking in English, so that's the truth. And of course they also have like an artistic style, a way of thinking, a way of living, a philosophy that today is being challenged. We can see the problems that European Union is having. We can see what Russia is rising again. China is another threat, and not just it's a big thing for trading and the commerce. And we live in a game in this time where all these powers are collapsing, and people are getting, back in the other times, lost. Once that core that doesn't move is starting to shake, we have like all these new religions, we have all these new philosophies, and there's people are kind of like getting lost in the time where we're living, and we are seeing like the rise of many ways of thinking that are collapsing each other's. And if you see it like, not sure if I'm explaining it the correct way, but I always tell everybody to have a look. I mean, you can see that there's like a strange connection or parallelism between, or modern times, what happened during the Baroque era and the Hellenism. I hope I answered the question.
Absolutely. I think that with this, your opinion, because you explained very well, so everything about the history, the historical thing, it's something that I will think about, because for me, what in my mind it was not so clear, but now I am something to think about, because it's for me it's a connection today.
Yes, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting to explore why the painters of the Baroque, why they painted what they painted, why the dramatism, why the theatre, what they wanted to express, what they wanted to say. And you have to understand the society of the time, and the strugglings of the time, and the wars of the times, etc., etc., etc. Just the same as the ancient world, just as today. And that's when you see maybe it's just human nature, but you see like very clear parallelisms. And that's why today I think it's very appropriate to use the Baroque language in painting to try to respond to the challenges of our time.
Yeah, of course, it's not the same Baroque, but it's in a contemporary key.
Exactly.
And so it's so our style, in your case, in your style, so your idea, your conception of the reality and what happened, and
precisely. Especially when after the Greeks invented the classical aesthetics, so to know it, I mean, of course they didn't have a word for art. They used the word technique, which means like technology or ability. But to understand, so everybody understands, is art. They created the classical aesthetics, the measurements, and the canon. And that canon has been used again and again and again. It was used during the Roman Empire. And even though it was forgotten through the Middle Ages because they needed other things more abstract or metaphysical, it came back during the Renaissance in Italy. And probably some people would argue that they even make it better. And it just gets to this splendor during the Baroque. And then, you can see like the French Golden Age that is in the Baroque as well. And then it's the neoclassicism of the 18th century, which is coming back. It has been forgotten. They was back in the 19th century, where some people say that that's the peak of classical art, of realistic art, until the the Impressionists and the avant-garde, and it went another path. And it seems that we're living in a time where it has been, with all the flourishment of the new academies, the Florence Academy, the Angel Academy, a new Renaissance. And this classical canon is coming back and is taking over bit by bit. So it looks like we're living in a new, rather Mannerism times or new Baroque times. It's an interpretation, it's a way to see it.
Okay, so I understand. Wow. But okay, of course. So if we mention the Baroque period, our thoughts go directly to Michelangelo Merisi, known as Caravaggio, and we have a precious master copy of you in our gallery in Florence. But I want to ask you if there are other artists you feel inspired by.
I mean, the list is it will never end. But I mean, there's like the most famous
We can
one.
talk here until tomorrow about this list.
Because a lot of you go to the school of Bologna, you go what was going on in France, what was going this happened in North European Baroque, and you have many artists, and some of them are very famous, like Rembrandt, for example. He's another star. Personally, one of my favorites is Giuseppe Rivera, José de Rivera, Lo Spagnoletto. That was born in Valenti, in Sciatica, and he lived all his life in Napoli.
Okay.
And he has all his production, and many people doesn't know if he's a Spanish artist or Italian artist. He's both. He's clearly like a Baroque Catholic artist, that's for sure. But then you got many others, like Guido Reni, you have like in Spain, you have Velázquez, you have Zurbarán, you have the list is
all the Caravaggisti.
Artemisia.
Artemisia is my favorite woman, of course, but his works are
there should be like an interview for each one. And we can learn so much of the period of time, because that's the thing, if I can, just to say something very quickly, that how we see all these paintings today is through the more modern visualization of art. We go to a museum and we just enjoy the painting, the sculpture by itself. Back in the day, it was intrinsically connected with life, religion, politics, and everything. And for example, you see the Night Watch of Rembrandt. It's pretty much a response of La Rendición de Breda, or the painting of Velázquez, of the rendition of Breda, of the surrender of Breda. When the Spanish Empire, the Catholic monarchy, which is the name that had back in the time, was fighting against the Dutch rebels of the Dutch Republic, and you see one painting of Velázquez done like 10 years ago, 10 years before Rembrandt's, but you see, the Dutch and the Spanish, after a battle, given the key of a city that has been conquered, and then you have a response, Rembrandt 10 years later, of this, the Night Watch, like all the Dutch soldiers like getting ready because there might be an invasion, and both paintings is a dialogue with one to the other. And from there, you see Rivera's work, you see any artist of the time, and it's a narrative altogether. It's really a window of what was going on back in the day. So if anybody got time to go to a museum, trying to link the paintings together, because it's a narrative made by many different artists. So of course the list is very long.
Yeah, it's very long.
It's very difficult to choose one. Everybody's amazing.
Okay. So before we, I mentioned in my presentation of you and this interview that with you it's possible to learn the Caravaggio's painting technique. But in short words, can you explain how you can teach this technique to students, maybe to beginners, to or artists. So how is structure for this work?
Like I said, like long time ago, I was trying to understand Caravaggio's technique by myself, and I took a workshop in Scotland, and I tried to read as much as I could, etc., etc. But it has been here in Florence where visiting certain places and seeing the paintings by itself, where I could research in depth how Caravaggio worked. Why Caravaggio? Because Caravaggio is like essentially the artist that took everything further in terms of technique. He created, so to speak, the Baroque. I mean, the technique was there before, the school of Milan, and Leonardo used to use it. I mean, it's nothing really new, and everybody, the artists used to use the murals and glasses to paint. But his performance was unique. He was very good in catching the light and making compositions through the light and using the mirrors and the glasses for the reflections, etc., etc. So I found it fascinating, and also it's linked to the Baroque time, which was like the technology was very important. Usually we don't think about it, but as well, like in the Hellenism, the Baroque was a time of splendor in terms of technology. And this is one technology, using the mirrors and the glasses to produce a very realistic painting. And a researcher, and essentially, just to explain what it is, if anybody wants to learn it, is the base of realistic art. So if you understand Caravaggio, you can understand Rembrandt, you can understand Velázquez, you can understand Rivera. That's why he's so important, or let's say he's like a starting point. And essentially, Caravaggio would use some of the glasses to put in front of the model, and he will draw the contour of the figure, and through then he will project it into the canvas that had a reddish imprimatura. And once he got it, then he will have the models in front of him, and that's why he didn't. Everybody was like, "That guy, he didn't use any preliminary drawing." That's why, because he will just project the image. So he got the construction lines already done.
Interesting.
Very fast. Because those guys, they needed to finish the commission. They needed to have it done very quickly. The sooner they finish, the sooner they would get paid. And do another one. So that's why.
I think there is another parallelism to them.
I don't think it's so
never-ending story.
It's always like that. And then from there, he will get the model in front of him. Thus, he will place or map where the light is through a very thick lead white grisaille.
The lead white, so now maybe, so with this workshop you will lose the lead white.
No, it's very dangerous.
So our student can be safe at our studio. So no lead white.
If the people that are interested, we can have a chat.
Of course, it's possible to find something, because it's interesting to show the real.
Exactly. So
the real style.
So at least they know
about the history of the paints, the pigments. And
how they
everything.
blend it together and mix them, and you can get titanium white with in yellow, mix it. I mean, it's many ways to get closer to the real thing. But it's good to share the knowledge, and people can use that knowledge in their own work or however they want. But it's very interesting when they give you like a very well structured, this is how he worked, or this is what we know how he worked, and the mirrors, the glasses, the imprimatura, the grisaille, a very limited palette, so all the colors were linked to each other, and that's how he worked it, and how he produces some of his work, and it's very, very good when you actually experiment with it and you get a master copy that then you can have it here in the gallery, but anybody can have like a Caravaggio done by himself at home. Exactly.
Yes. Wow. Well, it's I think it's really amazing this workshop, so this opportunity for fine arts lovers, so not only artists.
Anybody
as
that
well,
likes,
anybody.
it's an experience also for people that study art history. It's very interesting just to put themselves in the shoes of a painter, just to understand a little bit the technique of the time as an introduction. Because of course, you know, I'm pretty sure there's people that know way more than me, but of course each painter would use it things slightly differently, but you know, it's like a starting point.
But in a week, it's so full time. It's possible to finish. So to have the varnish at the end.
Yeah, with the people we have before, like we've done it, you can have like a you know, like a small version and you understand the technique, and then you can just do whatever you want with it. Just take it and incorporate it to your own work, your own production, or.
Yeah. No, and then it's interesting to say that. So together with the workshop is possible in Florence to see so few real painting of Caravaggio, because Florence has the second collection, most. So bigger
collection.
Yeah, after Rome, of course.
Of course.
And so here, very close to our studio, there is the Roberto Longhi Foundation, and you know what there is there? You know that it's the question. No, it's there is two paintings, but so the most beautiful is Il ragazzo morso dal ramarro.
Yes.
Yeah, so in English it would be the guy.
A young boy being bitten by
a gecko. Okay, cool. So I think so. I have no more questions. But if you have any suggestion to
the painting was young boy bitten by a lizard. One in the National Gallery in London, and the other one in the
okay, yeah, okay. But I like to think that it was a gecko.
It is a gecko. That's the translation for lizard. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Borja. It was another amazing interview now with me.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes,
it's always a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for us, and so I want, of course, to thank to other peers, to all the people that us to our studio to see your masterpiece.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And so to join us to the workshop for painting, so like Caravaggio. Thank you, and so have a nice evening, guys. Ciao!